rather snappy, won't you? I have some very heavy thinking to do before 10 o'clock.
So I'm super excited today. We've got Tim Parkin, someone that I think is, I've always called him the professor because I met Tim and he was behind getting a group of marketers together in Orlando. And every time I listen to him talk, and you guys are going to hear it, I'm saving it for a second, but this guy, I wish I had him as a marketing professor or a life coach. So Tim, welcome, brother. Good to see you.
Thank you, Chris. Likewise, it's great to be here. It's so funny thinking about how we first met then, because I would describe myself as an introverted introvert. I don't get my energy from being around people. And yet here I am putting on this event of all these marketers getting together. And you left such an impression on me. And I knew that we had to, keep talking and hang out more. And I'm so glad we have. And I'm so glad that it led to this moment here.
Yeah. Well, hopefully when we do part two, we'll be in person. This is
Yes.
obviously not a podcast studio. It's my office, our laundry folding room with a couch and general nonsense.
Love
This
it.
is the more professional background. On the other side of the wall is my insanity. But Tim, you've been featured in Ad Age, Adweek, Inc., Forbes, ton of other places.
Yeah.
Your content is second to none when it
Thank you.
comes to marketing. What was your drive and passion for that side of marketing and more of the educator? I've been there trying to bring people together. What drove all of this?
Yeah, I think the best place to start perhaps is that I know nothing about marketing. And that I think people need to hear that, because there's so much of this facade out there in the corporate world, in our personal lives, where people are pretending. Social media is all this veil of let me pretend that I have my life together and I'm happy. I don't know a damn thing about marketing. I'm learning as I go. And I remember one time vividly, I was advising a CMO of a big company, and he invited me to his town. We're walking down the street and he's asking me these questions about my background. And he's like, where'd you go to school? What'd you study? And I think I start to see him like question me. And then I can see his expression. He's realizing this guy doesn't know anything about marketing. He's got no marketing background. And here I am, I'm paying him a ton of money to advise me on, the direction of his company. But I think that's important. And I say it for two reasons. One, people listening to this need to realize that you don't need to have any experience or knowledge. You just need to do it. And two, I think often we assume that the people who have done it or who have the credentials or certificate or whatever know what they're doing. And I think as I get older, I realize no one has any idea what the hell they're doing, and we have to accept that we don't know what we're doing and that nobody does. And that makes a level playing field. So how I got to marketing is an interesting story that we can dive into, but it was never my intention to end up here. And I'm so glad that I did. But I think that's often where being imperfect leads you is, you just go, you do something, you learn, and then you pivot and you find your place. And so I think I found mine now, but it didn't start here.
I love that sentiment because I tell people a lot, again, I don't care what people think. I go into meetings and I say what's on my mind. And when it comes to marketing, as a younger marketer, I didn't feel that way. Because everybody's a marketer, right? It's one of the easiest professions to think you're great at without ever standing in front of a board or giving a monthly business review or planning a campaign. It's not all Don Draper and Mad Men, where we sit around and drink whiskey and come up with cool shit.
Yes.
There's a lot of psychology. There's a lot of analytics, data. But I tell people now, I have a run through walls mentality. I've always talked about that. People are like, wow, but I piss people off. Traditional marketers, textbook marketers, I drive them friggin' nuts. I've walked into companies and been like, oh, well, the proper testing is this, this, and this. I'm like, well, your proper testing has shit results.
Yep.
So why not just rip the thing off and try something drastic?
Absolutely.
And so that I sincerely appreciate you saying that. Because, again, a lot of my experience is failure in marketing.
Yeah.
When you have a direct mail response rate that's 1%, that's not that great. I mean, it is in marketing speak, but to the rest of the world, you failed 99% of the time. 99% of your budget went out the window. And, our ROI and all of those BS metrics,
yes,
those lift you up. And so I think I love that you said that. You've had a very interesting journey. You launched a business 16 years ago. Talk a little bit about what that was like in that moment, and then what it's taken and how you've adapted, because marketing 16 years ago is different than today. Talk a little bit
Yeah,
about your journey.
it's been a wild ride. So when I was 12 years old, I had my first freelance client, and I built a website for a local business, and I was amazed that this is possible. So I started out in technology. As a kid, I had a computer at a young age. I learned programming at a young age, and so it was my thing. And so I built websites at 12, and then when I was around 14 years old, my dad's company had a need for a system to be developed, a technology system, and so they jokingly offered it to me. And this is a $20,000 project for a 14-year-old. It was called Project Greenwater. I remember it vividly. And I thought, my God, I'm going to pay for college. My parents were thrilled. Um, and about a couple weeks into the project, I quit because school was too much for me and I couldn't handle all of it. But that left a mark on me that, there's this huge opportunity. And yet here I am. I was the one that failed. I was the one that, gave up on this. And did I let my parents down? Did I let myself down? I had all this doubt about it. So I kept freelancing as I grew older, and I freelanced for, 20 years. And then eventually I had clients on the side. I had a job right out of college. And I realized, like, screw this job. I hate doing stuff I don't like it to do for people who tell me what to do. Like, that wasn't for me. And I already told you I'm an introvert. I don't like being around people. And so I said, let me just do my own thing. And of course, everyone told me, you can't do this. It won't work. This is scary. Because this is, 16 years ago. It was a much different world then. Now I feel like everyone's a fractional something. And, you can freelance, you can contract. There's Upwork. There's all these places to do this. But it was much different then. So it was scary, but I did that. And so I did programming in the beginning of my business. And I worked for a lot of startups and companies, but we would build stuff for them and they would have no customers. And that was so disheartening, so frustrating that I was building really cool stuff. I was writing amazing code. And yet here it was a failure still. Like, was it me? Was it them? And so I thought, let me solve this problem. Forget programming. Let me figure out marketing, because they don't have a product problem. They have a customer problem. They have a marketing problem. So that's how I got into marketing. As I said, screw it. Let me learn marketing. It can't be that hard. And little did I know, it's a lot harder than you think. But also, it's not that hard. It's about people. And so I was
Yeah.
able to take the technology aspect, which is so important in marketing, and bring that to the table. But also, my initial venture as a child was to be a magician. I was into magic. And so we can talk about that. But,
Oh, that's
magic,
coming, buddy. That's coming.
magic and technology, if you combine them, what you end up with is marketing. And so it's about controlling people's attention and getting attention and telling a story. And then it's also about technology and how does it work and how do you track people and how do you measure things. And so I've been very fortunate that that journey has led me here to marketing, which I think I bring two really distinct skill sets to create something pretty profound.
That's amazing. So we're going to talk about magic in a second. You've got an interesting path with also, being a consultant, having your own company, but you started the advisory board. Talk a little bit about what that's doing and where you see that going.
Yeah. So the advisory board is a group coaching program for marketing directors to help them crush their goals and advance their career. And after doing marketing and consulting and coaching for a number of years, after I did the programming, I was working for a bunch of different companies, small startups, huge billion-dollar companies. And I realized they all have the same problems. Every marketer has the same problems. They're overwhelmed. They don't have enough time. They don't have a big enough team. They don't have enough budget. They have huge, ambitious, ridiculous goals. They're trying to figure out which channels to work in, how to run a campaign, all the same skills issues. And so I thought, rather than trying to work with a bunch of clients simultaneously, juggling that was very difficult. I was successful, but it was challenging. I thought, let's just have a group where I can teach everybody the same stuff, record it all, share it with them, and then every week give them feedback and coaching. And so that's been tremendously helpful. And it's humbling because, I have a lot of experience and knowledge to share with these people, and they appreciate it. They get great results. But the biggest value of the group is the group, not me. It's that they can hear from their peers and have support and accountability, encouragement. They can share things, what's working, what hasn't. There's people ahead of them. There's people behind them. And so they can kind of mentor each other, but also get support from people in advance. It's just an incredible place to be and to hang out. And I'm very fortunate. The group is growing and it's been tremendous. And so I'm excited about this new chapter of my business because I think it's a way to be the professor, as you've called me, to just teach and share and cultivate this environment of learning and growth. It's incredible.
I saw this, as a young marketer, I've always kind of been pigeonholed into marketing. I thought this is amazing. I love the psychology of why. As a kid, I always was amazed by the packaging of
Mm,
things and why behind that, and then commercials. And so when I came up, though, there was never, and now it seems like there are groups. As marketers, we're taught keep it close to your vest. You don't want everybody to know. There wasn't Google or TED Talks or YouTube or any of this. But the most important thing was there wasn't a group of mentors or
mm,
people in the same boat.
yeah.
And what you've done is you've brought people and you've given them a community and a circle. And I think that's going to be a big difference because I've seen that. I had Jeff Canas on, who was very successful in marketing, starting businesses, entrepreneur, but he and a couple others in upstate New York started a group called the Profound Group. And that brought in not just marketing, but business leaders. And they're in their third year now.
Mm.
And seeing the results of that and that group think, and it's helping the community. So what you're doing, was that an intentional, hey, was there a reason why you felt that you wanted to bring people together? Was it something you didn't have, or is it something you see as a bigger positive for our community and our industry?
I think it's becoming that. Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that. It was not my intention initially. It was more of an operations issue that I was consulting, coaching with many clients, and as one person, I don't have a team. It's just me. It was difficult to manage more clients, and I thought I'm burning myself out here. And if I keep going at this rate, it's not going to end well. And so I realized, let me just put everybody together. It'll be easier for me to manage selfishly, but also I figured they could get more help faster because it's the same stuff. I don't need to repeat myself, and two, they need to hear this from other people of what's going on. But I think you're right. It has become this kind of community and friendship almost where they trust each other. In the beginning, they don't. When a new person joins, it's very much, what is this group and who are these people? But after a couple of weeks, they start to open up more and share more things, um, and sometimes I don't even have to be involved. Like I'm not saying anything; they're talking and having a discussion among themselves, and that's what I want. I want them to be able to support each other because, as you said, we often don't know what we don't know. And often in marketing, there's a stigma that you should know, that you are expected to have the answers. But also, when you get feedback from other people who have different industries, different levels of experience, you get great ideas. Sometimes you're just stuck and you're the only marketer and you don't have the time or space or connections to say, what do you think about this page? Well, what about this messaging? Or how should I approach this conversation? And to hear from other people who have been there or who haven't, to get their feedback is tremendously helpful. And I think so many of us don't have that. And we don't have people who understand our language, marketing language, that is, to have those conversations with. So it's incredible. So I would like to take credit for how smart I was, but I don't think it's the case. I think it just happened to be that way.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. I know I've gone through it where I was with a big company earlier in my career, and I was the only marketer, and I was the only non-financial person on a C-suite,
Mm,
and it's nerve-wracking because you're literally, no one speaks your language. It's like dropping me in the middle of Russia. I don't speak the language.
yes,
I can hand gesture, but that'll probably get me killed.
right.
Um, and I had to learn finance. And it was
Mm,
one of the greatest educations that's helped me in so many aspects of my life to get outside of just being at an agency where everybody's the same. We're all different
yeah,
culturally, and I don't mean it that way, but professionally.
right.
But what I also noticed, and I screwed up a lot, was I kept it tight. And I was like, you're not in marketing. You don't understand.
Mm,
I had to change over the last decade where I had to be inclusive. And now one of my missions is, I'm with a different fintech, is to go out and purposefully bring everybody from outside in and to
mm,
say, hey, sales, product, and marketing, we need to work together. Here's what we're thinking, but we're going to listen now to what you're going through. I told the sales team last week, it's like, you guys are the front line. You're the most important people in this organization.
yeah.
We can market like crazy, but if we don't listen to you and you don't learn from us, it's disjointed, and your customer is going to see it. Your brand's going to reflect it. So I love the inclusion piece of that. And again, if you're the smartest person in the room, cliche, you're in the wrong room. I don't think
Yes.
that's right. I think it
Yes.
would be nice I would love to be the smartest person in the room once.
Right.
You
Yes.
know, so I think what you've done is really fantastic. And I see for this group more and more people, not just in marketing, but
Yeah.
people, it changes how you look at life.
It really does. Yeah, I'm I'm in another group. I'm in a couple of mastermind groups, with peer accountability, just colleagues and things of that nature. And it's super helpful because we all share our challenges and we talk about the things we're doing. And it's a group of people who will kick my ass, even if I don't want them to. They'll say,
Yeah,
you shouldn't be doing that, or you should do this. And I need to hear that because left to my own devices, I'll do the easy path. I'll take the lazy route. And that's not productive or helpful for me.
right.
And so I think that's what this group is becoming. And it's cool to see that there are people who will say, actually, that won't work. Or, here's what you should do. You need to speak up to the CEO and here's how you can approach that. And it's all helpful. It's all kind. It's all generous, but it's what we need to hear. And I think that there are many decisions that we face in our careers, in marketing, whatever, that we don't have the confidence, and that's really what this group is about. It's about clarity and confidence. If you know what to do and you have the confidence to do it, then you can do amazing things, but we often lack clarity or confidence or both. So it's been way more amazing than I could ever thought. I thought it would just save me some time and be a different angle to the business, and it's become a really close knit group of people who are doing incredible things. And I learned the most out of all of it, which is somehow it doesn't make sense, but I'm enjoying it.
That's extremely fulfilling.
Absolutely, it
Um,
is.
I want to take a left turn here. We talked about magic earlier. Where's your and the first time I met you, you captivated for an introverted introvert. You used magic to captivate 15 people you had never met. Maybe you'd had a couple of conversations, but we were together as a group and you pull out some cards and I looked around and I watched people because again, I'm more on the psychological or the psychology side. I'm like, what is he doing? And I watched everybody. They were like little kids watching you. And then you had the smart guys trying to fit in gals. Like, oh, you did this, and it was great. You had people in the palm of your hand. Where did your love and expertise in magic come from?
Yeah, it's a great question. When I was a young kid, I don't remember exactly how old, but maybe 8 years old. I remember being in the backyard, and my dad had this bucket, and he showed me the bucket was empty. And then he reached out and grabbed a quarter out of thin air, and I thought, wow! And he dropped it in the bucket, and he did this again and again. He pulled all these quarters out of thin air and put them in his bucket, and the bucket had I don't know 10 quarters in it. And I thought, my God, we're gonna be rich. My family's rich. And then later, of course, he tells me this is magic, and there's a trick to it. And so I learned, some of those tricks. And as a young kid, from 8 to 12, I believe, I was in a magic club where, get together a bunch of kids and some of the adults would, show magic, teach magic, and help raise up the kids. And there were some phenomenal people in that group. We're talking about groups here. Some of them went on to be professional magicians. One of them was in DC, and last time I was in DC, I got to meet him and hang out with him. It was so cool to have that experience of this is a very unique hobby. But then when I went to high school, I was again very introverted, and then also in college, I never wanted to go to college. That's a different story. But I ended up in college, 2 colleges, and you have to survive. There's a lot of people there, and so I found that magic was my way to escape from that. That I couldn't really deal with awkward groups of people, but I could have a crowd of 50 people around me watching me do magic, and that was my thing. And so it's almost like this character that I can turn on and turn off of like, it's Magic Tim, and here I am, and I can control a room, and then I can turn it off. And it's helped me a lot, in conferences or in client visits to have the confidence that I need when I need it, because, often it's nerve wracking to go to a new place and talk to new people, at least for me, especially in a sales context or in a professional context. Even though I have tons of experience and, I have nothing to fear, I still get anxious. I still get nervous. And so having magic as a crutch has helped me a lot with that. So I think what people don't realize, though, is magic is a ton of practice. I mean, you practice constantly for hours and hours. And one time my wife asked me to show her how a trick is done, because she also loves magic. And so I started to show her like the behind the scenes of I do this, I hold this, I say this. And she was like, forget it. It's way too much work and way too much stuff to remember. It's really hard. But I love it because what you create for people is this alternate reality, this moment of escape. And it's a feeling that I think we don't get often enough. And once you've been in magic for a long time, You don't ever get it because you know how everything works. But there are occasional moments when you go and see a show or see a magician and you're caught off guard and you get that moment of like, oh my God, what just happened? And it's the best feeling in the world.
So as a magician, you still get that, even though they're doing a different trick. You have some that they're longer, there's some quick
Yeah.
card tricks, coin tricks. What type of magic? Are there different types of magic? I mean, because a lot of people,
Yeah.
they just, oh wow, there's magic. Or you turn on America's Got Talent and they have a
Yeah.
magician or a mind reader.
Yeah.
Or talk a little bit about the different types, because I'm very interested and
Yeah.
intrigued in this.
There's a couple different categories. There's stage magic, which is like big. There's tigers on stage or cutting a woman in half. There's close-up magic, which is I'm right in your face doing it. And there's parlor magic, which is kind of in between. Maybe we're at a dinner and there's someone up in the front of the room doing magic. But beyond that, there's I would say skill-based magic. Kind of stuff I do with cards. It's just me and a regular deck of cards. What can I do with that? Then there's also gimmicks in magic, which are things that are not normal but look normal. So, a marked deck of cards would be a gimmick. It looks normal, but it's actually been modified in some way. Or a quarter that can bend in half, and you don't know. It looks like a normal quarter, but I can bend it in half and pretend to bite out of it. So there's gimmicks and stuff like that. And then, of course, there's like special effects, which you see sometimes on TV. And that gives magic a bad name because then people say, oh, can you fly? And I'm like, of course not. That's not real. I can only do so many things. But within the types of magic, there's cards, there's coins, there's all sorts of things. I like cards because one, everybody's familiar with cards, and two, there's so many things you can do with cards in terms of tricks and abilities and things of that nature. And there are some magicians who, a long time ago, created some card tricks, card moves, and even today, those are the hallmark. That's what people do, and some people have come up with some new stuff, but there's just so much to do with cards. I'll tell you an interesting story. There's a secret place that maybe people haven't heard of called the Magic Castle, and it's in LA, and it's a private club for magicians only. And the best magicians in the world go there to perform. And to get in, you have to have an invite. And so my dad happens to be part of the magic club around the world. And so we got access to go in. And it was amazing to see some really top performers, some people I've heard of, I've seen on TV. But the fascinating thing was we sat at this table while waiting, and there was this old guy there. I don't know his name, but we saw his picture on the wall. So he must be someone important and famous. And he takes a deck of cards and he starts doing stuff with the deck of cards. I can't even begin to describe how it works. It blew my mind. I've never seen someone that good, that skilled, and it was like real magic to me. I mean, he must have been a wizard because he was doing stuff I've never seen done before, and I couldn't even begin to explain. And so that is the feeling of magic I think that I love when people experience, and I would love the ability to do it more for more people. And I think if you haven't seen magic or seen magic recently, find a magic show and go. Not all of them are great, but if you find a good one, maybe you can have a good moment or two. It's such an incredible experience and an incredible hobby to have.
Was your dad a magician?
He was. Yeah, I don't know exactly how he got into it. I mean, his dad got him into it, but I don't know why he stuck around with it. But he's always kind of hung on to it. And he did a bunch of trainings, corporate trainings at his job, and he would use magic as an example. So while presenting, he would have some ropes and show the ropes and do a magic trick with the ropes and use that as a metaphor for whatever he was teaching. And it just always worked for him. So I guess he kept it up, and I'm glad he did because obviously it's now been passed down to me, and my daughter loves magic too. So we'll see if she can pick it up and carry the baton forward.
Who's a better magician, you or your dad?
Oh, wow. I would say, I'm sorry, Dad, but I would say me. But most recently, there's a type of magic in cards, revealing some secrets here, called Memdeck. And in Memdeck, you memorize the order of the cards. And my dad has pursued this now, and he's invented a couple things to help people do this. Really cool stuff. And so now he's an expert at Memdeck work. And
Wow.
the stuff he can do is mind-blowing. And you might think like, well, if you memorize the order of the cards, what if they get shuffled? What if they get mixed up? That still works, amazingly enough. So there's like ways around that, which is super cool. So the stuff he does now is, I think, leagues ahead of me with this new Memdeck thing he's pursued. So it's incredible. But my dad learned a few things in the past and only did those, and then I, during college, just expanded a lot. But now I've kind of let it to the side. I don't get to travel that much and be in person with big groups. My dad is taking seriously the Memdeck stuff, and it's super impressive.
That's cool. I mean, and maybe this podcast, Tim, is you're good at the marketing thing. Maybe you need a mastermind group of magicians.
That'd
I
be
don't know if
cool.
they'd want to get together and share their secrets.
Yeah. Well, my dad's in a magic club. And so they get together in person here in Orlando and they hang out and present and get feedback and critique each other. So I think we
That's
all need
amazing.
that.
Yeah.
We all need it.
What's one show you haven't seen that you'd love to see?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, one of my favorite magicians of all time is in Vegas, and his name is Mac King, MAC King. And people have never heard of him, but if you're in Vegas, go see Mac King. It's like $35 a ticket. It's at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in Harrah's, which is the dirtiest, nastiest casino in Vegas. But the show is amazing, and Mac King has been doing the same show for 35 years, I think, and it's hilarious. He's a comedy magician, family friendly, just a joy to watch. He is such a character. And so it's cool. As a kid, I watched him on TV. And then, my wife and I went, we got to see him in person and hang out with him afterwards. So it was just such a cool experience. But a show I haven't seen, there's a couple magicians in Vegas also. Matt Franco is one of them. I haven't seen him. I've seen most of the ones I want to see, though. Some of them
Have you
were
seen
amazing.
Shin Lim?
I haven't seen Shin Lim, no, but I have a friend who did. He is incredible. He is the best, I think, at the close-up sleight of hand stuff. I mean, no one
Amazing.
is better than him. Yeah, absolutely
Yeah.
incredible.
If you could have a beer with marketer or magician, deceased or living, who would it be?
That is so tough. There's some really good marketers and there's some really good magicians, but I would probably pick a magician, and it would probably be Tony Slidini or Houdini. But Tony Slidini, for those who don't know, is a really old guy. He's gone now, and he was a master of close-up magic. And if you go on YouTube and watch Slidini, Slydini, I guess, incredible stuff. For the stuff he does, he would move slowly. He was an old guy, but it still fools me to this day watching the videos. And some of the stuff takes a lot of figuring out to see how he did it. And it was so long ago, but he was so good. And
Yeah.
he just, you talk about the psychology. Slidini understood psychology so well and people's behavior that he didn't have to do fancy moves or use, mechanical props. He would just rely on understanding where you're looking, when you're looking, and how you're going to react. And he would use that to just absolutely fool the pants off of you. And I would love to spend an afternoon with him.
That's cool. What's your best trick?
I do this trick, and I've done it so many times, hundreds, if not thousands of times. And now it's to the point where if my wife is with me and I pull out the 4 aces, she walks away. She says, I've seen this too many times. But it's called twisting the aces. And in twisting the aces, you can YouTube this, but you have the 4 aces, you turn them face down, and one at a time they turn face up. And there's a couple moments in the trick that are really special. It's one of those tricks that in the middle of it, it feels like I've messed up when really I haven't. And that goes to the whole character of magic, of you have to really act and be someone else. And it's fun. But people always get a kick out of it. And it's just such a simple trick, but it's so visual. And I love doing it.
Have you ever just bombed? Where
I bombed
you
so
got
many
a
times.
crowd and
Yeah.
you're just like, I got this. And
It's funny because we were saying, when I went to college, my second college I went to, I knew no one there. I was brand new to the area. I didn't know anybody. And so I'm in line.
UCF?
UCF, yeah.
One
So
of
I'm
the
in line.
largest public colleges in the country, by the way, besides
Yes, that's
Ohio
true.
State, right?
It's
Yeah.
huge, massive. Yeah. But I knew nobody. So I'm in line at lunch the first day, and these guys invite me to sit down with them. I'm like, oh, cool. I already made some friends. And so they're asking about me, and I say, I do magic. And so I pull out the 4 aces to do twisting the aces. I get halfway through it, and I just completely blank. I don't remember the tricks. I haven't practiced it. And so I'm just like, well, that's it. It's the most awkward thing ever. Oh, well, I guess I just bombed. And fortunately, they were okay. They were cool about it. And one of those guys actually was our officiant for our wedding. So turned out okay.
That works.
Yeah.
A little humble pie on that one, I think.
A lot of humble pie,
as a
yes.
magician and a marketer, you got to
Yes.
be able to laugh at yourself and be like, look, I screwed up.
For sure. The good
Yeah.
part about magic is if you mess up, people often don't know you've messed up, and because they don't know what the end of the trick is. And so that helps a lot. You asked about this. So there's a type of trick called multiple outs. And in multiple outs, I may say, Chris, name any color that you want. And if you say red, then maybe my phone has a red case on it. And so I knew you were going to choose red, and it would say, you will choose red. But maybe if you said blue, I might pull a card out of my pocket that is blue that says you will choose blue. But maybe if you said yellow, I would take off my hat, and under my hat it would say you will choose yellow. So there's multiple outs, but you don't know that. And so if I just showed you the trick the first time and you said blue, and I pull out this card that says you'll choose blue, you think, my God, how did he know? Because you don't know there's other options. And so failure in magic is a lot like that. As long as you have a backup plan, or maybe multiple backup plans, then it's really hard to fail miserably. Oftentimes you can redirect to something else.
I love it. So you just ruined magic for me, by the way. If you were a pro wrestler, would your gimmick be the magician, the wizard, or something completely different?
Ooh, I think I would never be a pro wrestler. So that's the first thing. I'm not built for that. I would die. But yeah, I think the magician would be a good one,
I don't think they've had one.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I'm a student of pro wrestling, and my wife makes fun of me at every minute, but I don't recall a magician gimmick that actually worked. So there's hope.
That would be
I'll be your
good. Hey,
manager.
if this marketing thing doesn't work out, I know where to
Or
go.
I mean, you can combine two loves here. Music, it's a big thing. I ask everybody that comes on the podcast, what's on your Spotify or whatever system platform you use right now.
Yeah. This is an embarrassing one. So I was in music as a kid. I don't listen to a ton of music, but what I listen to now mostly, because I don't like words. I can't listen to words. So it's a lot of like EDM or almost like trap music. But the best thing I can tell you is Harry Mack. I don't like rap music at all, but I discovered Harry Mack, and he is a freestyle rapper. You can look him up on YouTube. This guy is just a positive guy, spreads positivity, no foul language, stuff like that. But two, he is the world's greatest freestyle rap talent, full stop. He takes these different words from people and puts them together in ways with meaning and simile and metaphor and double entendres. It's just absolutely incredible. You won't understand it or believe it until you see him. So go to YouTube, look up Harry Mack, and go watch it, because it is mind-blowing what he can do.
It's funny that you say that. I've noticed you don't swear, or maybe you do and I just haven't heard it. I grew up on a farm, therefore I use that as a crutch. But you said this guy with the rap, but I love comedy, stand-up comedy.
Yes.
And someone like Jerry Seinfeld doesn't swear compared to Dave Chappelle or again, I like, but I never realized how good you can be without that. And my kids have a swear jar going, which I think I owe them. I think I'm up to 82 quarters that I have to put in there, and that's Monday. But it's amazing how in life, everybody tries to be different, right?
Yes.
Like I'm the living oxymoron of tattoos, swearing, all that bullshit. And you don't have to be that. Everybody's trying to be different. You can just be a non-controversial funny person or a good magician or good marketer. Not everything has to do with that. So I really appreciate that you said that, and it's someone I think a lot of people should know more of. But
I think so. Well, I'll say one more thing to that, Chris, which is I do swear, and I try not to.
What's your favorite swear word?
Well,
I have to get you to swear.
What's my favorite swear word? I don't have a favorite. It's just like whatever comes out of my mouth. But I will say, I don't drink, and I think that, and no judgment to anybody, but I think that alcohol, in my opinion, is the most abused drug in the world, and especially in our country. And so that's a conscious choice I've made, that I don't drink and I won't participate in that. And if there's champagne and stuff like that, of course, I'm not going to turn down everything. But I think that that has caused a lot of angst and anxiety in my life, as you can imagine, being around a bunch of people who are drinking or who want to drink, or at corporate events, and it's like always awkward, like, oh, you don't drink, or So that's been a challenge. But I think you're right that when you are who you are and you just have your value set and you own it, and as you said earlier, I don't care what people think. You can judge me, you can hate me, you can think I'm weird, but that's my decision, and I'm going to deal with it. I'm going to live with it. I think we all need to be that way about whatever our thing is. If it's alcohol, if it's smoking, if it's swearing, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It's just be who you are, own yourself, and don't worry what people think. And it's easier to say that than to do that. But I think we can all work on that. I'm working on that I am who I am, and you like me or you don't. And if you don't, I'm sorry. But if you do, great. Let's hang out. You know
Yeah,
what?
that's the beauty. That's the beauty of you and everybody. A lot of people in life. Like I have an eclectic group of friends or people, colleagues, or that I like to go be around that aren't like me, or
Yes.
that don't like the same things I do.
Yes.
And it's very fulfilling. I look at relationships with people like my wife and I are two completely different people. She, I'm into wrestling and bourbon and the things I like. She's an artistic carpenter, plant, crazy lady, and it
Nice.
just works. It
Yes.
is truly yin and yang. And I think,
Yeah.
in magic and marketing, and you have to have people around you that are different. And
Yes.
it just, so I love what you're saying. Last question I have, and I'm going to dip back into marketing because this is driving me nuts.
Mm.
Apple comes out with a new iPad commercial. Have you seen it?
Yes, I have. Yes.
So everybody, I mean, I open LinkedIn, which is painful enough as it is. Like you said, everybody's being something else. But the outrage
Mm.
over Apple crushing, for anybody that hasn't seen it, Apple released a new iPad commercial where it's this crusher that crushes all these old school pianos and beautiful creative instruments and
Retro
all of this.
TVs.
And
Yeah.
I'm saying I'm already giving you my feeling on this, but what the outrage is? You're destroying all these things that were creative. Apple, how could you? What's your take on it?
Yeah, I saw this and I was puzzled by it at first. Like, what is the outrage here? Because you're right. It's all these old timey things from the past, TVs, radios, pianos, instruments, whatever, even some little toys, and it crushes them all. And I guess people are saying the metaphor is, oh, you're crushing all these things instead of, celebrating them. And it's what got you here and that sort of thing. And I don't know, I think people look for meaning when there isn't some. I do agree with some of the criticism that Steve Jobs probably wouldn't have created this ad. I think this was not as aspirational as some of the other ads. If you look at the old days of Apple, Nike doesn't talk about their shoes; they show you Michael Jordan dunking. Apple
Right.
talked about here's to the crazy ones. So I think that is the Steve Jobs era. I think though people are expecting Steve Jobs to be producing ads today when he's not around anymore. This is the new
Yeah.
direction of Apple, and I think that the ad makes sense to me that there's all this stuff and it's squeezed into this tiny thing, this new, thinner iPad. And what I like about it is it's so visual that you see all this stuff that's represented. It's music, it's games, it's toys, and it's all squeezed into this one thing. So I don't have a problem with the ad. I think if you want to worry about things getting destroyed and being disrespectful to them, look at our recycling and garbage problem with the trash piles and heaps we have and how we
Right.
ship our trash everywhere, and look at how these things are being used and abused today. And there's so much like plastic waste. So I don't know, to me, when there was this whole issue with plastic straws and they said we're going to go to paper straws, one, have you ever tried to drink from a paper straw? I mean, I'm going to swear
You
here, it's
better drink it
impossible.
in 30 seconds or less.
Yeah, it's impossible. And I said to my wife, I said, this is absurd. I'm not supporting this plastic straw movement. Turns out I was right. It accounts for like 0.0001% of plastics. We need to solve the big problems. And I think worrying
Right.
about this Apple ad, and if it's whatever, harmful, disrespectful, I think it's nonsense. I think people just
Yeah.
want to complain about something, and maybe it's, anti-Apple people. There are people who
Yeah.
are Apple and not Apple, and I've come to the dark side. I'm an Apple person.
Yeah, me too. And thank you, Apple and Tim Cook. You will be putting my kids through college. I told a financial advisor many years ago to put everything I had into Apple.
Nice.
And he called my dad and said, "Your son's crazy." And so I'm an Apple guy too. I looked at it. I think I'm a simple-minded person in a lot of ways. And I went, "Oh, no kidding. They shoved it all into that one little iPad and
Right.
it's better than ever before." That
Right.
that was, and I looked at that, and even crushing that stuff, folks. I don't know with CGI or AI or
Yeah.
whatever technology. I got a feeling that wasn't even real stuff,
I think you're
right?
right.
And but to come out like that, I think it's a bigger thing, especially in marketing. Some people say, and I sort of agree with this. Look at all the attention it got.
Yes.
Is that going to sell more iPads? I don't know. People who hate Apple, like you said, they're not going to buy Apple no matter what you do.
Right.
It was an interesting thing. I hadn't even seen it until I opened LinkedIn one day and everybody was pissed off.
Yeah.
And I think as a marketer, I've worked in fintech and financial services. It's not the most exciting. You can't really get too crazy because you're dealing with people's money and approvals and denials and rejection. It's dicey. I've always said I wanted to do that. I worked for a company, helped rebuild the brand for a gun safe company. Talk about both sides of the aisle. You're never going to get anybody happy, but we would get these people. Our safes were designed for the U.S. military. They were built, manufactured in China, and brought here because nobody in the United States works with metal anymore. Those days are gone. And if you can find one company, it's 10x the price, which no one will pay for. We would get these keyboard warriors. I won't even say keyboard, mobile phone, cell phone warriors that would torture us. They'd torch us on social media, on YouTube. You're Chinese junk and blah, blah, blah. And I always wanted to come back and say, could you please tell me what device you're typing this message on? Because your phone is not made in the USA. So again, I'm a marketer that is like, you're going to piss people off either way. I thought it was a great ad.
I think so too. Yes. And I think to your point, it got people talking. And that's the goal of marketing, is attention.
Yeah.
And I think that whether it's good or not, whether people like it or not, it's almost irrelevant. People are talking about it, and that's huge. You can't pay for that kind of earned media. And I think it's a testament to what they've done. Some people love it. Awesome.
Yeah.
Some people hate it. Even better, because now they're going to talk about it and make the ad live on longer. And I think if you go back, the Apple ad from a long time ago, a 1984 ad.
1984.
People hated that. I mean, the IBM people sure hated it. So I think that's exactly what we need. Is you got to piss some people off. If you're not pissing people off every day, I don't think you're doing it right. And so
you should see me drive, buddy.
I have,
especially here in Orlando. Yeah, here in Orlando, where 65 means 95.
It's so true. Yes.
So Tim, you've got the advisory board. What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the best. I post there 6 times a week. I have a daily podcast now called the Marketing Director Daily, hence the name. Post 5 times a week, every weekday. So check it out. Connect with me. I'm an open book.
TimParkin.com.
TimParkin.com. Yeah, I'd love to support, connect, and share and encourage anybody in their journey. And I think too, 16 years ago, I quit my job to start my own business. And if you're thinking about it, do it. Figure it out. It has been the worst and the best decision of my life, but ultimately it's been an amazing ride.
Well, I appreciate you, brother. Wish you nothing but the best. And we'll do part 2 of this with in-person magic tricks.
That'd be great.
We'll do it soon.
Let's do it.
All right, brother. Thank you, Tim. Take care, bud.
Thanks, Chris.
You make this rather snappy, won't you? I have some very heavy thinking to do before 10 o'clock.